There we go. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight, and welcome to the Whatcom County Justice Project Town Hall. Tonight is going to be a night of information. We're going to talk a little bit about the implementation plan, but we're here to hear from you tonight. So without further ado, I will turn this over to our facilitator, Holly O'Neill.
Okay. Hi. Nice to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. And my name is Holly O'Neill, and I've had the luxury and the pleasure of getting to facilitate this process and our work here tonight. So up on the screen, you'll see this is an outline of our agenda. So we're going to start with a history of the Justice Project and the potential implementation plan projects. Then I'm going to step in and review a little bit of our meeting process. You'll understand how it's going to go tonight in terms of gathering the public input. And then we're going to wrap up and adjourn at 8 if we're lucky, but that's the plan. So the purpose, here we go, next slide, is to share information about the Justice Project and hear your feedback. That's why we're here. We've got members of the County Council and Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force, as well as people who participated in the SAC, that's a Stakeholder Advisory Committee, who are either in the room or online. So if you were in any of those groups, could you raise your hand? Yay, let's give them a little hand. Thank you. These folks have been working for over a year to really try and understand this very complex system and try to make recommendations, identify the needs, make recommendations, and that's what we're going to share with you tonight. The session is being recorded, and your input is going to help us come up with a final implementation plan. So how we're going to actually move forward in the next 1 to 3 years. It is a hybrid meeting, so you can find everything online. So for those of you who are with me in the room, we have this little stack of papers that's in the back. And if you're online, all of this is online and you can just click it and follow along. Okay, so I think we're ready. Barry, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
Again, welcome everybody. I am Barry Buchanan. I'm the chair of the Whatcom County Council, and I've been leading the Justice Project now for the past 5 years. And kind of want to talk a little bit before the SAC process started. Executive Sadhu and I, we both go back 5 years on this. Then Council Member Sadhu, we went on a listening tour throughout the county to hear just some feedback on the previous 2 ballot measures, and so that's really when it started. We spent about the first half of 2018 going to 7 different locations, and we got a lot of information back, and that went into really to gear up this whole process. Next slide. In 2022, the Stakeholder Advisory Committee went to work. We had we had a total of 10 meetings. We had 5 meetings and 3 extra workshops that went into creating the Stakeholder Advisory Committee's needs assessment. That became kind of the North Star in our guiding document. It outlined many recommendations that were based on the needs and the gaps that were found during the process of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. And so in 2023, we rolled that Stakeholder Advisory Needs Assessment into an implementation plan. That plan is being led by the Executive's Office in conjunction with our planning team. And you see a lot of us here up are the planning team. Deputy Executive Schroeder, co-chair of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, Stephen Gockley, and his colleague, Jack Hovenier, who couldn't make it tonight. And then myself as well on that planning team. We had the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force acting as a law and justice council, provided a lot of guidance throughout that process. Next slide, please. As you can see, there's three overlapping elements that we came to find during that process, and they were systems, services, and then facilities, both in the community and in the jail itself. Next slide. These basically summarize the all the different sources of public input that we had. In March, we had 5 workshops that the IPTRF hosted that dealt with those 3 levels that we just discussed, plus funding. And we had an extra one on facilities, so for a total of 5. Then in April, we held 7 focus groups and a survey. Tonight is another incredibly important opportunity for input into this implementation plan. And then the council and the Incarceration Prevention Task Force will be revising in accordance with what we learn and refining that plan. And then those final priorities for action will be presented to the council. Next slide. Throughout the process, and especially in the focus groups, we found we found 3 very important questions. One of them, which is information about who is in the jail and why they're in the jail, cost estimates for the new facilities in the different locations that were discussed through the process, and then how the size of a new jail will be determined. So who is currently in the jail? We had Lieutenant Erickson from Corrections came and presented to council and gave us a snapshot of what the jail population looked like. As you can see, the average daily population was taken over a span between April 24th and May 1st, and it was 325 was the average daily population. Now, on a more specific snapshot on May 1st itself, there was 191 folks in the main jail and 103 in the work center. 19 were in custody on electronic home detention, and then 35 were in a pretrial release out of the district court on electronic, that was through Superior Court on electronic home monitoring program. Next slide. These are some of the crimes that people are being held on that snapshot. A Class A felony, which is murder, bank robbery, assault, so on. There was 90 people. Or a total of 28% of the population. B felony, which is robbery, attempted murder, and assault, and these other items that are in the chart. 131 people, or 41%. Class C felony, assault of a first responder, domestic violence, DUI, and etc. 61 folks, 19%. And gross misdemeanor assault, usually in domestic violence, DUI, and violations of no contact order or probation, 12% or 39 people. Next slide. 90% of the people that are booked and held in custody have at least one felony offense, at least one. 50% have been deemed to have exhibit mental illness, and 80% have exhibited substance use disorder. And 22 people are awaiting competency restoration as of 5/1/23. Competency restoration is when a person is deemed incompetent to stand trial by a judge. They are ordered to have an evaluation done. And if they are deemed to be incompetent to stand trial, then they have to go through a restoration program. That takes place down at Western State Hospital, and they are backed up, as long as a year right now. So we have folks that are waiting for restoration that just cannot get a bed. So that's a big clog in the system. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Tyler. He's going to talk about some of the facilities that we came across when we did our workshops for the implementation plan. So Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Again, Tyler Schroeder, Deputy Executive. It's been my honor and privilege to work with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force the last few years on really identifying some systematic changes as it relates to kind of the whole criminal justice system and interrelations with behavioral health and how to get better outcomes for individuals that are unfortunately stuck in those situations. So as we've been looking through it, a lot has been focused on the systems and the services but there's also been a discussion on facilities, considering design, size, location, and cost for different facilities throughout the system. So on the next slide, it's going to walk through an indication of facilities that are needed to build a better system. So as many in this audience knows, the county has invested in a crisis stabilization center that was built just after 2017 and through 2019. Kind of what I would say is our first step to recognize from a county standpoint, the need for additional care at the right time in which somebody is in crisis. So building off of that facility, the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and the task force in the implementation plan has looking at ways to accomplish the construction of a new jail with trauma-informed design and integrated medical and behavioral health services throughout the facility. That's absolutely lacking in the current facility, and it's been recognized. And we need to take steps to improve that as people are found in that situation. Coordinated with that facility, the task force has acknowledged the need for a behavioral care center. Behavioral care center is one of the takeaways from a trip that a large group, Councilmember Buchanan, members in the audience here had the opportunity to go to Nashville. In the Nashville facility, there was a coordinated behavioral care center for individuals that could be housed for a short period of time and diverted from the criminal justice system through the prosecuting attorney, the public defense, and members that run the care center that would be able to expunge the crimes that those individuals committed as they stayed in the behavioral care center. So that'll hopefully be a coordinated effort with the new jail is a behavioral care center. The third is a 23-hour crisis relief center. Indicated earlier, the county's built the crisis stabilization center. That's accomplished some short-term relief for individuals. But I think we also have recognized that we need a better location for law enforcement and for EMS to be able to drop off individuals that are in crisis. And this crisis relief center will be hopefully that location and a kind of coordinated campus as it be located. Luckily for the county, the legislature, thanks to Representative Rule and other down in Olympia, has already allocated $9 million for this crisis relief center. So we'll be able to take the steps forward and hopefully invest in this facility as we go through the next process to further define the rest of them. Locations for reentry support services, supportive housing, and additional facilities for voluntary and involuntary behavioral health treatment are also on the plan as we move forward with the implementation plan. So in the next slide, we recognize that we need to build a better system. And one of the first puzzle pieces to that is the determining a location for a new jail and the coordinated behavioral care center. It's the largest and most expensive of those facilities that I just got done talking about. And we have the opportunity to have 3 county-owned properties under consideration that could be the location of the facility. There's the Civic Center, which is near the courthouse, just south of us in the parking lot across from the current jail. Iron Gate or Division Street, which is approximately 10 acres, about 5 of them developable out on Division Street, out by the WTA location in the existing Crisis Stabilization Center, the Andean Center of Hope. And then also La Bounty Road, which is off on Slater Road and I-5 in the south of Ferndale. Locations for all of the other needed facilities on other county properties can then kind of fall into place about the best location so that it can be a coordinated campus facility. And a lot of the feedback that we got from the focus groups indicates the appeal of a campus concept with co-location of facilities for increased continuity of care and less travel in between those facilities as they work together. On the next slide, we're going to recognize the desired facility designs and features. So the Stakeholder Advisory Committee identified criteria for a new jail listed in the Justice Project Needs Assessment. A new jail coordinated with behavioral care center, ideally co-located. A trauma-informed design to reduce trauma. This means natural light, the use of color, natural beauty located within, and spatial layout and visual interests on a daily basis and for individuals that are housed in those facilities. Individual cells has been recognized as an operational need. That is to allow for people that are located in our correctional facility to have a place for themselves on their own terms and location. And then also an integrated medical and behavioral health services throughout the facility. So a centralized medical facility instead of where we currently have, which is smaller than a classroom, probably in a high school. It needs to be larger, more integrated with medical and behavioral health services to be able to meet those individuals and the trauma that they have and provide the services that they. So next slide, what I indicated is a group went to Nashville, and there's a very good example of kind of the Nashville Downtown Detention Center and Behavioral Care Center. Recognize that each individual jurisdiction, city, state, does criminal justice differently. You can only kind of take away certain key points and key themes. And the key theme that we took away is the photo on the right, which is the Behavioral Care Center. If you look up, you see the skylights from the top, which is bringing in natural light, the light colors and the different palettes of the chairs and the location. This is where individuals, I think about 20 or 25 were in the facility at that time, were serving about a 30-day time frame, and that their crimes were going to be expunged or released from the prosecuting attorney while they stay there. There are still some details and understand exactly how that type of behavioral care center can operate in our jurisdiction and within our state concepts of the laws. But I think it's a main goal of our community is to carry that out as it looks into a new facility. So on the next slide, we look into more design concepts. There's been historical conversation between a horizontal facility or a vertical facility. There's been recognition over the many years about some pros and some cons for both of those. So this slide is just trying to recognize that that's important to understand, to have community dialogue, to have community feedback on them, so that the council and the administration and the community can make the right decision moving forward on what concepts to recognize. I would say overall horizontal design, versatility and how the pods are used, less expensive to build, easier to monitor and safer design. And from a vertical standpoint, the pros would be less land is required, more options for locations, and could reduce travel time from the civic center and the courthouse. Some cons from a horizontal design requires more land. You need 14, 15 acres likely for a horizontal construction. So that means there's fewer options and likely more travel time because it's harder to find that large land base for the facility. Cons for a vertical design, the facility dimensions are permanently set. You kind of have to construct the size of the facility the moment you build it, because it's very hard to add on to a 5-story, 6-story, 7-story facility. Less versatile, more expensive to build, and some of the operational components associated with a vertical design. Lots of conversation has happened in the stakeholder advisory committee and then the task force in regards to these criteria. We're open and interested to hear more input from the community today. So conceptual cost estimates was a component. And when you look at a facility somewhere between 400 and 440 beds, which would mean removing, so as we look to build a new facility on one of those 3 sites, it is with all intention that we would be closing down the 150 bed work center and building new 440 to 440 bed facility. So on the next slide, just to show some visualization of the 3 sites, the Civic Center, again, is adjacent to the courthouse, about 1.3 acres developable. It would be a vertical design, close to 7 stories. It could locate some services in the general area. And the general conceptual cost estimate would be $207 million. Iron Gate location, it's about 9 to 12 minutes from the courthouse. It has 10.6 acres, but 5 developable acres. A vertical design at Iron Gate, somewhere between 4.5, 5 stories tall. and would have a cost estimate, a conceptual one of $170 million. And the LaBounty property, Slater and I-5 south of Ferndale, about 12 to 15 minutes to the courthouse, about 16 acres developable. At this location, you could construct a horizontal design. It has maximum potential for co-location of other facilities and a cost estimate of approximately $137 million. Those cost estimates are also important as it recognizes the different funding sources that are available and what it means to be able to construct a facility, but also have additional funds available for some of the behavioral health services and outcomes and the other items that are identified in the implementation plan. I think I have one more slide. There we go. So the last slide that I've been asked to present is just a recognition of funding sources. I feel like I've gone through a lot of information in a quick period of time, so I can't wait to hear some input from the community. But there's a number of different funding sources for all the different services and facilities. There's state funds associated with behavioral health and housing facilities and capital costs. There's the County Behavioral Health Fund, which is identified for any behavioral health purpose, including therapeutic courts, school prevention, community behavioral health services, psych services in the jail, and one of our new programs, the GRACE program, and alternative response. Medicaid dollars are available for healthcare, including behavioral health services outside of the jail. So unfortunately, we aren't able to utilize Medicaid for individuals that are incarcerated for the services that they're being. One of the recommendations in the implementation plan when you get to that. North Sound Behavioral Health ASO. I myself ask myself what exactly that is, but really it's an organization that helps pass through state and federal or regional behavioral health dollars for facility services in crisis. And then local housing funds. Bellingham has passed the home funds. Currently, the county has passed 1406 and 1590, which are state funds that we can bring in to do affordable housing and services. And then the last that's at the top of this list is a ballot measure for a sales tax. And that's the component and the vessel for constructing and implementing the implementation plan. So 1/3 of that type of sales tax would have to go to criminal justice by law, and 2/3 for any other purposes the county and the cities decide in the ballot measure, including and can be the implementation plan. But what one identification is that it's probably one of the only, or if only a couple available sources to construct that new correctional facility and behavioral care center. And so it's important to recognize that that's a method for us to be able to take care of the needed replacement of the correctional facility, but also will likely have some funds available to be able to accomplish the rest of the implementation. I think Stephen Gockley is going to be able to go through the rest of the implementation plans. So thank you for your time. Are we okay, Holly, if we answer a question? Yeah, so I think the question was whether or not the services in the behavioral health or would be available for individuals that don't live in our community, but find themselves in our community. I think the answer would be yes. Yes, those individuals would be able to be helped by these services. Yeah.
So we have one more presenter. Stephen's going to present, and then we'll start the public comment, okay? And if you haven't yet got your handout, it's on the back of the table there. So you might want to pop up and get that. Okay. Mr. Gockley.
Thank you very much. As Tyler said, my name is Stephen Gockley. I'm co-chair of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. Have been for a number of years. I was a member of the SAC and one of the SAC planning team members. And I'm now one of the members of the planning team for the implementation process that.
Your sound is still out there. Maybe just bring in the mic.
Okay. Better? Okay. Okay. I'm on the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task. So I'm going to go through a list of potential projects. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee worked for well over a year to come up with a needs assessment report. The implementation team has taken that information and the recommendations from that and distilled things down into roughly 5 clusters of activities that we're trying to move forward as part of a holistic plan. And within those 5 areas are 15 action plans. Your packet has a list of those. I encourage you to take a look at that, and I'll just be quickly gliding through those for you. The 5 clusters of activities, or categories as we call them, we want to increase access to behavioral health services, a critical feature to diverting and treating rather than incarcerating more people in Whatcom County. We want to expand the capacity of existing programs that reduce incarceration or prevent a later return to jail for those who had been incarcerated. We need to build capital projects, an array of facilities needed to promote both public health and public safety. We need to work on systems changes through law enforcement, prosecution, the court process, court administration, and community-based services. And we need to do that, we find, both with local partners, with regional partners, and at a state level through legislation and administrative efforts, advocacy and otherwise. And lastly, we feel this project owes a commitment to common community members to both be transparent in what's happening, and that requires collecting data. A lot of times it's data that we don't collect yet, or that we don't collect and don't share, or that we don't share across the system so that we can form wise policy decisions using that data. So we have a lot of work to do in the data realm, and that forms the last cluster. So the 15 projects, and I want to say, first of all, in your packet also, I want to draw your attention to near the end, for those of us who learn better visually, there's an infographic that sort of talks about what was in place, the progress we've made, which is in green, and proposed projects, which include both expansion of existing resources and new resources, and that's in blue. So take a look at that. That's also on the website. And last thing, I want to preface these projects by saying this is work that we are in the middle of. We're not at the beginning of this. We've been working for years through the task force to develop creating services, adopting innovative approaches to divert and treat many people who previously had to have been incarcerated or were incarcerated. So there's been a lot of effort already under our belts. The system is much better than it was. It's far from where we need it to be. And that's what these 15 projects are intended to accomplish. So the first one is to increase the capacity of already existing programs that can divert people and treat them. Mostly that's in the area of behavioral health and substance use disorder treatment, but there's a lot of coordination of services. There's a lot of support that needs to be built around those services as already exist. We found that out from experience, and we can see where we can make improvements there. We need to build systems that facilitate coordination between organizations and between government entities. These make the services that we have and the services that we can create more effective and more successful in outcomes. Thirdly, we've found that we have rather substantial and gnarly workforce issues. Law enforcement is finding it hard to hire and retain law enforcement personnel. Behavioral health services, community agencies, and otherwise are having a really difficult time finding credentialed, qualified people who want to take on what sometimes are the hardest cases rather than work in an easier private office setting. So we have a big job to develop workforce. And I want to emphasize this is a statewide problem. It's a national problem, these workforce issues. So we're not alone in trying to tackle them, and we're going to need a coordinated effort there. Fourth, from talking to people about being incarcerated, one of the cracks that people can fall through in this system, and that's part of why that communication and coordination is so necessary. One of the cracks is the first step out of the door when they're released from jail, and that is, where do they go? So we need to take steps to ensure that people leaving the jail have transportation and that it's to a safe destination. Their likelihood of success is so much greater if those pieces are in place, rather than returning to the environment that they came out of that got them in trouble in the first place. Fifth, we want to bolster reentry services. There is a cluster of services that we can provide that provide humane and knowledgeable and skilled help to allow people to enter the workforce, to pursue an education, to coordinate services, to get encouragement and other peer support from people who know what they've been through, to find housing, to connect with healthcare. All of those things will make reentry into the community and the ability to be a productive, constructive part of the community more likely. We want to ensure ongoing efforts to maintain the little bit of supportive housing programming that we have in the community and to expand that substantially. Supportive housing is a term of art. It doesn't just mean a place to live. It means services on site, basically 24/7, that very highly skilled kind of support that makes the ability to utilize that housing and make a successful transition into the community that much more likely as well. Yeah. Seventh is the 23-hour crisis relief center that Tyler mentioned. We have $9 million from the last legislative session to construct that. This will be this will provide an easier and quicker drop-off spot for people in emergency behavioral health crisis. It will facilitate the coordination with emergency medical service personnel out in the field and law enforcement who encounter people in crisis. It will allow them to drop them off, have them evaluated, have them start a stabilization process. Maybe it's a step into the Ann Deacon Center for Hope Crisis Stabilization Center, or maybe it's a connection point to other services that better meet their needs. Again, as Tyler indicated, we want to build a safe and humane jail and have that coordinated with not only this array of community-based services, but coordinating with the behavioral care center that's specialized and sort of medium-term treatment resources for people like you saw in the photo from Nashville. Number 9, we wanted to research building other facilities. So we already have developed on Meridian Street what is called a recovery house now. It's a clean and sober 24/7 staffed treatment center for participants in recovery court, what used to be called drug court. So they're working through substance use disorder and treatment for that, which could lead, if they're successful in meeting conditions, could lead to the dismissal of criminal charges against them. That's one example. The Crisis Stabilization Center is another. The Crisis Relief Center is another. And we're looking for other ways in which we can provide both voluntary and involuntary mental health and substance use disorder treatment facilities. The 10th one is to work on making changes in the court systems and related parts of the criminal legal continuum of services to limit how many people end up in jail and to limit the time that they have to spend in jail. We'll also be looking at and evaluating options for dealing with the role that bail plays in the incarceration or the release from incarceration of many people. It's important to note, because we'll probably get some comments about this, bail is a part of the state constitution. It's not something that without a constitutional amendment, we could eliminate by our own local action, but there are a lot of ways in which we could limit how often bail is imposed by the judicial officer, how much bail is imposed, and how that bail can be put up, so to speak, to engender relief. We're working with judicial officers, the prosecutor's office, and the court systems to explore some of those options. Tyler also mentioned the use of Medicaid funds for jail-based services and medical and behavioral health services. The state is about to apply for a waiver of some Medicaid rules. These are at the federal level. They're not easy to change, but they can be waived in local circumstances. We're working with government partners at the local, county, and state level to include in that waiver request an extension of the time at which Medicaid funds could support the provision of services to those who are detained in jail. We have a competency restoration work group that started and is continuing to explore options for how we can better restore competency to those people who are detained but are so acutely and severely subject to mental health problems that they can't understand the charges against them. They can't even cooperate and communicate with their defense attorneys to proceed with their case. So that's work we've started, and that's work we'll continue with. And lastly is the last set of measures that I emphasized in the summary. We need to collect better data to measure our progress on reaching the outcomes that we set for ourselves. We want to develop a data dashboard that's public facing and that will be shared with other partners in the criminal legal system, but also with the public as a whole. And we want to use that in policy formulation, policy revisions, so that we're making sure that we're tracking what's actually happening and we can see that it's accomplishing what we intended it to accomplish. Finally, one of the strong recommendations of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee was that we include the voices of BIPOC communities and people with lived experience in the jail setting in overseeing the implementation of these plans and the whole capital projects that we'll take under, and in helping us evaluate and put together future planning processes. So those, we already have ideas of how to incorporate those voices in the implementation plan as we go forward. The last thing I want to say is, Holly mentioned we're looking at a 1 to 3 year process. If you look at the scope of these proposed implementation projects and the work that will go into them, it's going to take more than 1 to 3 years. But this is a holistic plan that balances both diversion, treatment, and for the very severe charges that many people face and are sitting in jail with right now, with an incarceration option of a limited capacity. We want a balanced system, and we're trying to look at a package of services that we can put together, including a variety of funding sources.
Okay, here we go. When I started, I said that it was a luxury to be here. And I thought, God, that must have sounded odd, but it is. And I want to say why. Because look at where we are. We're in this amazing room where we get to sit together and listen to each other. We're on the traditional lands of the Samish, Semyamu, the Lummi, the Nooksack people who have been here since time immemorial and who are still caring for this land. And we are eternally grateful that we get to be here. So here we are together. And I'm going to go through what the process is. And then what I'd like to suggest is we go for a full 80 minutes because our presentation was longer than we thought. So I want to give you all the full time. Okay. So we'll go, Tyler, just give me the check my time. All right. So you ready? Yes. Okay. Here we go. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak. We'll have one person at a time. So you want to line up in groups of 4, and that'll keep the process moving. And also we'll make it so we don't have people lined out the door. I'll take 4 comments from the floor. I'll go back and forth and back and forth. And then we'll hear from the people on Zoom. I think we have like, how many, Marty? 79 people on Zoom. So we get 4, and then Kathy Halka is managing the online, and then she'll call on 4, okay? My colleague Marty Solomon here, who is just amazing. She's going to be listening and capturing themes as we go along. So we'll have a report at the end, because this is really important. I just, we did the focus groups, and it really influenced how we saw the projects. And tonight, your input matters. That's all I can say. It matters that you're here. Okay, on Zoom, you're going to want to use your raise hand buttons. Hopefully you can figure that out. Good luck. Yeah. So can I see the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, couple of basics. No, you cannot assign your time to someone else. You have each person has their 2 minutes. It's yours. Also, each person has a right to speak, and they have a right to be heard. And nobody's voice is more valuable than the others. And it's something that as a consensus facilitator, I feel really strongly about. Like, I really ask that you not applaud some people and like hiss at others, or just be quiet and listen. Because everybody, like what you were modeling perfectly. It's like, oh, this person, like when you're in a meeting and you agree, you can do a quiet snap, or you can wiggle your fingers to show that your mind has been spoken. But please don't just be quiet. Okay, that's my request. Remember, you don't have to speak perfectly to be heard. So when you get up here, just say what you have to say. It's important that you speak. It is really helpful if you speak respectfully. When people start attacking, then the listener just closes their ears. So if you want to be heard, I strongly recommend that you just maintain that courtesy. And if we run out of time, do send your comments via email. We're gonna try and just hold that 80 minutes, yeah, and see if we can get out of here at a reasonable hour. Okay, y'all got it? Now remember, their job, and everybody who's here who's part of the IPRTF, their job is to listen. So this isn't going to be like a Q&A, right? This is like really, we're listening to hear what you have to say. And if you have questions, we'll note those down. Got it? Okay, I believe in you. All right, let's see 2 people. How am I doing this? 4 and 4, Marty? Yeah, 4 and 4. So 4 over there, 4 over here. We'll take 4 in total, then we'll flip. Okay, how much time do we have, Tyler? 8:05. It's going to go to 8:05. We're doing okay. Okay, you guys ready? Okay, 2 minutes. You're on. And it's nice if you say your name too. Oh, whoops.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson Buchanan, members of the council and of the community, and a special thank you to those who've been working tirelessly on this project. My name is Joel Johnson, and I'm a Bellingham native and spent part of my childhood growing up in the county. Throughout my career of going out into other areas of the country to fight for social and economic justice and returning home, Bellingham has always been a safe haven for me. A place where I could go for a walk downtown or on the boardwalk or at Lake Padden and feel carefree. Unfortunately, as public safety crisis has spiraled out of control, like so many others, I no longer feel safe in our community, and I'm outraged at the suffering related to violence and homelessness we're being faced with. It's clear that conditions at the Whatcom County Jail are deplorable, and we need a long-term solution to that issue. But we need to take action now to intervene in the crisis our communities are facing, and I believe we're arguing about the wrong things. We need bold solutions now for infrastructure investments in mental and behavioral health and recovery services our community is lacking. And the solution is simple. The county executive should, without delay, proclaim a local public health emergency in Whatcom County to address the needed resources to address this crisis comprehensively. The revised Code of Washington defines an emergency or disaster as an event or a set of circumstances which demand immediate action to preserve public health, protect life, protect public property, or to provide relief to any stricken community overtaken by such occurrences. I think it's clear to all of us that these issues are interrelated and that the conditions in Whatcom County constitute an emergency. So I'm asking for the members of this council to join me in calling on the county executive to take action now through the proclamation of a local public health emergency so we can begin addressing this comprehensively right away. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Crystal Rodriguez, and my comments are based on the questions that are posed in the for this town hall. My concerns are that if we propose a bigger jail, that means we're not seriously considering an overhaul to our justice system. If the county prioritizes building a new jail instead of services, I'm concerned that the county will prioritize building a new jail instead of services that help people dealing with addiction and behavioral health issues. Also, that the implementation plan project list doesn't include oversight to ensure funding will be directed to service and diversion programs. And that the county will not provide an opportunity for the public to comment on draft ballot measure language. The projects I believe will make the biggest difference include increasing the capacity of effective existing programs to divert people from incarceration, bolstering re-entry support services, ensuring ongoing efforts to maintain and expand supporting housing programs, continuing to make changes in court systems, expediting access to competency restoration services, developing a data dashboard to share data within criminal legal system organizations, and collect data to measure progress. And a few important considerations or that I would like the council to consider is drafting a ballot measure that proves you're dedicated to improving our local justice system by prioritizing services, then building a new jail, providing acute behavioral health services within the jail and providing ongoing support in an outside of jail setting, and providing transparency around funding and any justice system failures and successes. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, my name is Christopher Dial. I'm homeless here in Bellingham. I wished I had like 20 minutes, but I'll just try to summarize and say, as far as any like faith-based programs, I think they're just, ever since President Bush did the religious-based initiative, that's what it's all based on, but mostly is faith-based initiatives or faith-based programs. And that really puts homosexuals, gay people into a predicament. And I attempted suicide in 1985 when I quit alcohol and drugs. I've been clean and sober 37 years. And immediately I told everybody, at Salvation Army and all the different places, I need help with the gay issue. I'm really screwed up over it. I got shamed over it. My father even threatened to kill me with a gun because it brought so much shame to our family. And I couldn't get it resolved and nobody would help me. Instead, they sent me to AA. And the next thing I knew, 4 months into it, I'm staring at a sexual moral inventory, trying to get God right with God with a capital G and him with a capital H instead of God with a lowercase g or a goddess. That would be spiritual. So I was in a religious context trying to get right, but in order to save my life, to stay sober, so I didn't return back to the alcohol and drugs, I had to get right on the homosexual issue. Is it moral or is it not? And like nowadays, people are like, oh, well, it's kind of passé. They're like, but not necessarily, because you look at the Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, National Football League, there's nobody out of the closet. They're all closeted. They can't come out. It's not safe. So it's still taboo. The subject is still very, very difficult. The conflict can be very devastating for people. And so I just wanted to try and get this across that that moral ambiguity and relativity, I didn't know that was involved in morality. When I got sober, I could have killed myself over this issue, trying to get right. And so I'll just have to leave it at that. But thank you.
Teresa Hertz, thank you. I'm glad to be here and I want to trust. I really want to trust. But I'm going to take you back to 2008 when I joined NAMI. This is an amazing organization. They helped me understand the dual diagnosis that my son faces. He has used the jail more than most people. It's a very complicated diagnosis. So when the opportunity arose to stand up and speak for the behavioral health tax, also known as the Hargrove Initiative, I was all in. And it passed. The NAMI community was elated. Within a few years, I became a NAMI board member. That's when I realized the enormity of the crisis. Every day, cries for help, people wondering where to get it and how the tax money was being used. We were weary, trust was eroding, but you know what? Life went on. October 10th, 2015, NAMI held the first stigma stomp to raise money for mental health. The community showed up, but they wanted answers. Trust was eroding really fast. October 23rd, 2015, after consulting with NAMI at the state level, NAMI Whatcom drafted a letter to our membership asking them to reject the jail tax. Our community's no to this jail tax was a yes to investing in behavioral health, and it was a very strong message. Our no to the jail tax in 2017 was yet another cry for help. Here we are again, millions and millions of dollars later. Look in our streets. What is the message here? That's what I want to know. Is it we get services once we pass the new jail? Because it sure sounds like that. Here's what I have to say. No more trust. Guys, beautiful plan, but mine's gone. Expanded services first. Oh no, not simultaneously and not after the fact. First. Thanks.
Okay, so now with your word from the folks after you beyond that.
Yes, now we'll go to the 4 attendees. We'll start with Dina Jensen, then the attendee listed is Kay Halani, and my apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Then we'll go to Natalie Chavez and looks like Brian Estes. So go ahead, please, Dina. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Dina Jensen, Birch Bay. First, I want to make it clear that if you propose a tax related to this project, I would not be able to support it if the majority of those funds would not be used for services. We need all the existing funding sources you listed and far more to bring in services at the scale and quality needed to meaningfully prevent crises and serve those who are in crisis. Additionally, I'm opposed to a jail being located in the same small city as Customs and Border Patrol and ICE facilities. Besides the prominent community calls for programs and practices that offer restorative justice over the significant amount of time that past jail tax measures have appeared on the ballot, and the prominent calls for more diverse emergency sheltering and services for those people who are in crisis in our community well before the pandemic and on through it, there has been far too little progress in providing, increasing, and improving such services to the level needed. It's hard to see a few more substantial services being proposed, only as sidecars to a proposal for a type of lockup facility that is supposed to be able to remove the label of inhumane in connection with our Whatcom County Jail. If we can't take measures to maintain our justice system and current jail in ways to prevent them from being inhumane, it's hard to trust that new structures will change this. It's discouraging to recognize that promoting public engagement for incarceration prevention and reduction task force meetings only has begun in conjunction with the arrival of Justice Project promotion. If our government leadership and agency staff members don't become more proactive in preventing discrimination and mistreatment of marginalized community members, if they don't become consistently and meaningfully engaged with their community, even if the proposed projects get funded, they won't get us very far. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to the attendee listed as Kay Halani. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, you're saying my name right. It is Kay Halani. I actually don't have anything written down, but I am a wife of an incarcerated individual who is in the system today. I have to say no to the taxes because I know from my own lived experience that rehabilitation is such a huge issue. If the taxpayers don't know the real reasons of what's really going on, they need to. And that's why we are building awareness with families of the incarcerated, is the fact that if you are going to be building another jail and there is no true rehabilitation, our communities will never be safe. Imagine sitting in a bathroom for 4 hours doing absolutely nothing. If the jail is being built because of the fact that there's more money going to different places, it's not right, and people need to be aware of that. And I will be a strong voice on that. Nobody hasn't actually said how many beds are going to be at this jail, nor where the location is going to be of the jail. And I think that there's needs to be more transparency behind that. We actually vote for your elected positions. So I hope our voices are actually heard. And to start off the meeting of saying, be quiet, not appropriate. I have to disagree. We are all equal to all of you. We are just as human as all of you. So I hope all of you do the right thing. And I say huge no to building a new jail, because it will do nothing but create more unsafe communities. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Natalie Chavez and then Brian Estes. Go ahead, please, Natalie. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please, Natalie Chavez.
Hello, my name is Natalie Chavez. Thank you for listening to public comments this evening. I watched the replay of the Justice Project workshop that took place yesterday at 2:30 p.m. in council chambers, and I just wrote down a few notes. First off, I support the LaBounty site for various reasons. It seems to be the most logical for easier monitoring. The horizontal designs is a safer design for employees. And in case there's a natural disaster, like an earthquake, and we're expecting the big one of these years. And it's also safer in case there is a fire. It's also less expensive to build, and there is an option for expansion, and it's less expensive. As far as the time it takes downtown, 12 to 15 minutes, it's really not much. We're pretty spoiled here in Whatcom County compared to other places like in California or Seattle. 12 to 15 minutes is not bad. And WTA might be able to have a schedule that goes out there. There could be a facility van to shuttle folks. I really don't think 12 to 15 minutes is a problem. As far as the 400 to 440 beds, and that includes 150 work center beds that would move to the new facility, that decreases the total new beds to only 250 to 290 beds available. I'm suggesting 600 to 650 beds, and I'll explain why. I'm hoping that, I think that if there's flexibility included in the implementation plan, flexibility for bed use, like jail beds, medical beds, work center beds, etc. Kind of like our local hospital has different wings that open or close due to how many people who they are serving at a specific time. And also other counties who need jail space can rent space from Whatcom County in those additional beds and generate some money that way. I also think.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we'll go to Brian Estes, and then after that, we'll go back into the chambers for 4 in-person commenters. Go ahead, please, Brian. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Brian. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Task Force's Behavioral Health Committee. I'm also co-president of NAMI Whatcom, although I'm speaking tonight and the views are my own. First, I agree with the need for a behavioral health facility, not in the jail, but co-located on a campus-style facility. My concern is that both the jail and behavioral health facilities should be built concurrently and not sequentially, with the jail being built first. Mental health recovery does not occur in a jail setting and should only be done in a separate behavioral health facility. I recognize there might be fiscal constraints to this approach, but other sources of revenue, such as the 2004 jail tax revenue, which I understand is currently going in whole or in part to the general fund, it might be available. And also some funding from the behavioral health fund could also be used for this. Second, I want to commend the group for this project list. It contains a number of key services and facilities. I thank the SAC and the task force for recommending them. This is a long and expensive list, but also essential.
Our criminal justice and legal system has many moving parts and are the responsibility of the public defender, county prosecutor, courts, and the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office and Jail Administration. What process will be in place to ensure these separately electeds work together effectively to implement the Justice Project successfully? Finally, you can't have accountability and transparency without good data. And I agree with Stephen Gockley that this is essential to properly provide oversight and evaluation of how the Justice Project will be evaluated. We need to put a lot more emphasis on this in the coming year in order to make this project a success. Thank you for considering my views, and I yield my time.
Thank you. And now we'll go back to commenters in the chambers. And if anyone else would like to speak after that online, please go ahead and raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone.
My name is Bob Burr. Prior to COVID, I was a regular attendee at county council meetings. I'm a well-known curmudgeon in town, and I have a few comments about the jail. In commercial real estate, there are 3 principles. Those principles are location, location, location. And I'm here tonight to tell you that if you call Ferndale LaBounty, it's not going to change. People in Bellingham are not going to support a jail out in, quotes, the sticks. If you build out there, I'm sure that you'll do all the necessary things like ensure that there's bus service that goes to the jail all the time, because it's going to be very inconvenient for people to get there since there's no public transportation now. I'm glad to see that you're concerned about people once they leave the jail. Having been a guest of the county twice in the jail, one of the things that struck me as horrid was that they took my money when I was booked, and when I got out, they gave me a check. Well, that's fine for me because I'm an upright citizen in the community. But if I'm a homeless person and I'm released on a Sunday, what good is a check going to do? And one point that's not mentioned, and it's really a biggie. I'm glad to hear the commentary on humane, but unless you stop having the sheriffs in charge of it, it won't be humane. You need to get.
Thank you for your
civil
comments. Your time is
servants.
up.
Thank you. My name is Rupert Ayton. I am lucky enough to be a Bellingham homeowner, and I'm privileged as a Whatcom County taxpayer. And I appreciate all the hard work that everybody here has done. I would like to say that I think a lot of this comes down to your item number 10, systems. Unless we change our court systems and everything about that, I don't think we can solve the overall problem of who ends up in jail and who doesn't. And I think there's a big piece that's being left out of that, and that's money. Money drives everything. And until we look at the finances of our court system, and specifically the revenues and who bears the burden of that, we're not going to solve the problem. And I think if we look at that, we make it transparent, we can reform it, and I think we'll end up with a more just system. Thank you.
My name is Joy Gilfillan. I'm the executive director of the Restorative Community Coalition. I've been volunteering as president for over 13 years. Prior to that, I've been in business. I'm here to submit the fact, and I'm going to hand this piece off, that asking the public right now for $150 million when they just went through 3 years of extreme economic distress, when we're facing a global economic crisis, when we're facing meltdowns on every single level, when Whatcom County taxpayers just went through a 3-year economic crunch that included 4 law enforcement agencies assaulting the people across the street during the January 28th event, and we have not had a single after action analysis of what happened to the public because of that. We had no analysis of what happened to the public because the Whatcom County Sheriff, the executive, and the prosecutor in 2010 took a plan that was supposed to be an 800-bed plan and turned it into a 2,450-bed plan. And no one's inquired what happened. Between 2004 and 2008 or 2010, we had the state passed the Hargrove bill. We passed a 1999 1% sales tax. We did all kinds of things to support bringing community public services to the community. And you know what happened? Suddenly it got whammo, turned over upside down, and nobody has investigated how come we paid $2 million to HDR at that time and turned it into a 2,450 bed business plan. That 2,450 bed business plan was turned into a jail industry lobby. And they have been pushing Whatcom County hard ever since, and you're all subject to it. You're all scapegoated. I was scapegoated. I didn't understand it. It didn't take me until just in the last couple of years.
Thank you for your comments. Your time
Of
is
doing analysis to figure it out. I say no.
My name is Georgina. I'm Georgina Pauline Davis. I'm from the state of Alaska, and I've got physical disabilities, not mental disabilities. I've been in incarceration, mental institutions, harassed by the police, stalked by certain police officers, and by the system, whatever kind of system goes on in this county. But within the last 15 years, I've had my personal belongings, my phones, my everything I have. Now I don't have nothing. Okay, the behavioral health system, the Whatcom County Jail, behavioral system, the doctors, counselors, and the service people. Some of those people that, when people that are homeless, because I'm homeless, I have a certain amount of people who have died. They're not here today. Most of their things are not there. Some of the people that I know personally are still out there, are homeless. They're not getting the help that they need. And where's the money going? There's been buildings being put up, and most of the homeless people are in little tiny homes. Some of these people that really need help are not getting the help. They're not getting treated. They're not getting the help that they need physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and their stuff just getting taken away from them. And something I've been stopped, okay, and it's not fun. I'm at base camp, but nothing. What do you do? Thank you.
We'll go online to Misty Flowers, and if anyone else would like to speak after Misty, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or by dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. Go ahead, please, Misty. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. This evening, I would just like to point out a few things. One is that the public is really not understanding the funding issues, and I think that it'd be really good to educate the public on that, because I know that the jail tax is only part of the funding for this project. I also think there's a concern when you put a bunch of different ideas together, because you're going to have some people wanting mental health reform and some people wanting criminal justice reform. And because you have a lot of opposing ideas about how to get there, the project itself is stalling a lot longer than it needs to. And if you were paying attention to the Bellingham City Council on Monday night, you heard somebody talk about the inhumane treatment at the current Bellingham jail. And the problem is we have a jail, but it's completely rotting, and we are shipping people out of our county on taxpayer dollars. So we need to have a jail that's actually functioning. We obviously need support with mental health services and otherwise, but there's no need to stall a physical jail that is much overdue as we hash out the other details. I also think when you're looking at the budget for the different projects, the La Bounty project obviously makes the most sense because it is the least expensive and has the biggest opportunity to expand. And I also want to say that there is a concern about throwing a lot of different ideas together, because much like 22 North, that was a program set up for wraparound services. What often happens is when you have people trying to get criminal reform and substance abuse reform, they have to leave the environment that they're in to get the support that they need. And by putting all of the services together in one location, you're actually very likely to be perpetuating ongoing criminal behavior, ongoing mental health issues. And I really think that it is a disservice to our community to be wrapping them all together. Thank you for your time.
Next, we'll go to the attendee listed as Rhiannon. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good evening. Rhiannon Bardsley. I use the she, her pronouns. I have just a few questions, and I really wish this was more of a dialogue because there's not a whole lot of accountability in this process. But I am curious about how BIPOC communities and people with lived experience were included in this plan. I'm not sure that they were. I heard that there was possibly some effort that could be made or wanted to be made to do it in the implementation part, but I'm super curious about where that happened in the development and why would BIPOC communities and people with lived experience want to implement something that they didn't help create or inform at a deep level. I am also curious about what % of the taxpayers' money would be invested in the behavioral health services. I'm curious about the fact that, considering that the fact that the jail is disproportionately incarcerating Native Americans, how would the behavioral health services be culturally competent? There was a mention of behavioral health services being in crisis in terms of workforce. It's hard to want to support something when like a big piece of that is that is a real that's a real issue. And so building a jail and not having the appropriate staff and services and support and treatment around that ahead of time, we've seen, like 22 North was mentioned, we've seen what happens when we don't support the services in robust, healthy ways that are culturally competent. And also in my last 10 seconds, I don't see much of the commitment to race equity in any of this. I see no representation of that in the work that was presented. Thank you.
If anyone else online would like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. We'll go to Andy Douglas. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, I have no problem with the Ferndale location. I live in Bellingham, but it's equally close to me to go there or downtown. However, I am concerned about the poor pay for mental health workers in this county. I did do some of my training in mental health at the Cook County Criminal Facility, which was in a beautiful park location with high walls. But the staff was very poorly paid, poorly trained, and poorly supervised, and there was an enormous amount of cruelty towards the people who were in that facility. So I really want to be sure that we are investing in the payment for people that are well trained and well supervised to do this kind of work and well supported, so they don't also become cruel, as I saw in that facility. And I hope that we have great transparency in how this money is going to be spent, and also good oversight on the maintenance of the building, because that did not happen with our last jail, and it really did break down badly because of a lack of maintenance and water intrusion into the building. Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak and you're joining online, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no hands raised at this time. Maybe we can come back if any others raise their hand later.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I have worked in behavioral health for the last 10 years. I have certainly experienced that our I've experienced professionally that our jail is undersized, and it has ripple effects on the mental health worker community. And I also see impacts on police officers and their ability to do their jobs. It's detrimental. It's challenging for us. I do support building a new jail. I know that ours is undersized. It's dilapidated. In regards to location, I think that intuitively, I guess professionally, I lean towards Iron Gate because there are other mental health services in that area. But when I think about the integration of a jail with the existing mental health services, which would be crisis triage, and the social detox, I don't really know how that would even, how that fits together. So is there even a point in having them located nearby? When I think about the location in La Bounty in Ferndale, I wonder about transportation costs. My main lean towards Iron Gate would be the potential lessening of the transportation costs. So I'd be really curious about the difference between transport costs for Ferndale versus Iron Gate. I certainly don't think that downtown is the right venue and building kind of like a high-rise jail. I just don't think it really suits the situation. I also see a need for transparency and trust building with our community. I'm hearing that a lot in the comments so far. I see that a lot online. So that's all I've got. Yield to my time. Thank you.
My name's Elaine Woods, and I really appreciate the work that has been done, and I really appreciate how much the problems of mental illness and behavioral health have been taken into consideration. I really second what was just said. I think the idea of looking at Iron Gate because of getting people there. I've heard EMT people saying that they can't really keep taking people in the fire engine all the time when they have to get them someplace quickly. This is a problem. And the idea of the respite center being close there in Iron Gate and the necessary combination of these different agencies. One last thing, staffing, of course, as we found in 22 North, how can we keep trained mental health people who have gone to college, who are there, boots on the ground, in the trenches? How can we keep them here in Whatcom County? I'll talk to you later. So thank you very much, and thank you for all you guys have done.
It's funny you should bring that up. My name is Anna. I'm known in Bellingham as Charlie, and I'm a former EMT and former medical receptionist, so I have some experience in this field. And I love this entire proposal. I came here tonight not knowing anything about it, and I thought, wow, this is the future of mental health. This is the future of healthcare in America. But then I thought about it. And a lot of what people are saying here is correct, and a lot of what I was going to bring up. You made a comment earlier about retention and hiring for these programs, right? I'm going to read this as I wrote it here. Is everybody okay with one swear word? Okay, no swear words. Sorry, I have a neuroendocrine tumor, so sometimes it's difficult for me to hamper my language. So I'll try not to. People don't want to work for the police because they're racist, misogynist jerks. People don't want to work in these facilities because they are run by people who are racist, misogynist jerks. And if you're wondering how I know that, in addition to racist and misogynist, they're also ableist, because when you say I have anxiety, the 4 times that you go into the ER at Peace Health, they will tell you it's just anxiety, go home, here's a Xanax, when it was an undiagnosed neuroendocrine tumor that you could die of. We have a serious problem with the culture of emergency response in this county, and it's only gotten worse because of COVID, because we've pumped money into these quick solutions to try to get people to not die. And we're not paying attention to the fact that there is a chronic endemic that is about to happen. A lot of people, a lot more people are about to die of these issues. And where I want to support this facility, I really do. That money needs to be spent right now, changing these cultures and actually getting help in there, because we've got the systems, we just don't have the people.
Good evening.
I'm Irene Morgan. I'm founder of the Restorative Community Coalition. I've been here many times. You know my thoughts, but I get to say them one more time. I feel you have not been listening, even though we have had listening tours. The public knows that incarceration doesn't work. It's in every article you read that is on the internet practically. I've heard the word hopefully tonight many times as far as the plan is concerned. That concerns me. Hopefully, we don't know what that means. What are your plans specifically? I'm looking for a better system, and the system is alternatives. And we can do a lot with what we already have by reducing the numbers in our jail. Like you or whoever did your roster, I looked at that on the 21st of April. I believe there were 8 people on EHM, electronic home monitoring, the bracelet. And the fellow here behind me, who used to run the Skagit County Jail, has a much lower price for his EHM or for their EHM than we do here in Whatcom County. It's $60 a day, I believe. And I know there's a whole process behind that, how you arrived with that, but that can be changed. You changed it once, you can change it again. And you can reduce the numbers by, many communities across the United States have no cash bail. There's no bail at all. It is a moneymaker for the system. And everyone in the jail being held on bail is legally innocent. They have been charged, but they have not been convicted of anything. And there is no continuing services like many people would like to say there is in our community. I know because I work I help people, I advocate for them in the courts, and there are not continuum services, maybe for a few. Thank you. By the way, no new jail.
We'll go to our online attendees, starting with John McGarity, then Debbie David and Jessica Rienstra. Go ahead, please, John McGarity. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please, John McGarity. You have 2 minutes.
Hear me?
I can hear you now. Go ahead, please.
I was just saying, regarding the issue of transparency, the lack of it in the whole process, which resulted in the jail being voted down several times. People don't have a sense of trust that they're actually being told the full story. So the council does that, it's not gonna pass. And the reason why it's not gonna pass is twofold. One, we have so many capital needs that haven't been addressed at all. And all types of capital needs, housing, medical, education, whatever, safety. And those items haven't been actually defined or discussed by anybody. And you can't just forever forestall that. Regarding the jail, there's never been an adequate accounting for any of the proposal. The initial proposal about doing it horizontal jail, I never saw the pencil workout on that, but how they arrived at that was the best one for the money. There is a real question about that, particularly being divided into 2 different operations between social services and punishment. You don't have to have them both in the same place, that's for sure. That's about it. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Debbie David. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me clearly? Because sometimes the speaker is not very well working.
We can hear you okay, but you're cutting in and out.
That's what I was worried about. If I continue to cut in and out, will you please interrupt me and let me know so I can change to a different device?
I'd like to ask that you go ahead and change to a different device because I can't hear you very well.
Okay, I'll be back as fast as I can.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the next speaker then while Debbie is getting a different microphone. Jessica Rienstra, go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Fantastic. Thanks. My name is Jessica Reenstra. I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. And like a lot of folks who have spoken, have some pretty strong emotions about this. But I would like to keep it data centric. So I think what prompted me to speak up is the use of the term trauma-informed jail or trauma-informed incarceration. And that feels very incongruous to me. If we look at data, the National Library of Medicine, there's an article published by Dr. Nancy Wolf about the contextualization of physical and sexual assault in male prisons. Now, this is not specific to Whatcom County. I would be very happy to hear what the data is for Whatcom County specifically. But the abstract states that physical and sexual assault are part of the prison experience. Approximately 21% of male inmates are physically assaulted during a 6-month period, and sexual assault is estimated at 5%. And so if we're going to continue to send people to incarceration and accept that 20% of them will be assaulted and 5% of them will be sexually assaulted, that's the opposite of trauma-informed to me. There's also no note that I've heard of for harm reduction or sterile supplies in jail. And while I would love to believe that substance use doesn't happen in incarceration, that's just not factual. It's also harder for my patients to get access to life-saving medication, such as HGV treatment, pharmacotherapy for substance use disorders. For several years, access to medications for opioid use disorder in the Whatcom County Jail was just Gatorade. Incarceration is trauma, and to present it as otherwise feels quite patronizing. And I think without adequately quantifying our current shortcomings and failures, how could we possibly build anything better than what we currently have? And behavioral health and mental health services must be centric to any and all future planning. Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no hands raised. Go ahead, please, to the in-person speakers.
Hi, my name is John, and excuse me, I'm a little nervous because I'm about to bring something up that I wouldn't bring up if it weren't for the matter at hand. I have a substance use disorder and I'm currently in recovery. And because of experiences I've had, I have been taken to the Whatcom County Jail. And I guess I just want to reiterate how dire the situation is. The conditions in there are very bad. There's a couple examples I've heard of the women's wing of the jail flooding because of the backed up plumbing. There was a point where I had to go into the concrete broom cell to pee in the grate on the floor because the toilet didn't work. And the mats for sleeping on are so worn down, they're basically a piece of rubber fabric, and it doesn't really make a difference on the steel bunks in there. So there was also a moment which connects with the problem with the police and their probably racism. I don't want to speculate, but there was a man locked in a cell who was Native, and he was screaming and crying, and all I saw the police do was kick on the door and yell back at him. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Hello, my name's Charlie Wend. I'm actually a Skagit County resident, but I just retired a few years back from a 37-year career in adult corrections, both in the state system. It was probably in the year 2000, 2001 or so, a couple of years, I ran Whatcom County's Department of Corrections Field Services and Work Release Facility. The last 7 years of my career were spent at Skagit County, where I was Chief of Corrections, and we worked to build a new Justice Center that opened 5 years ago, just as I retired. I believe I gave you a tour of the facility as we opened. Just a couple observations. The old jail we had in Skagit County was similarly built in the mid 80s with state dollars that assisted all of us around the state to build new jails. What I can tell you is the jail that I ran for a few years before we stepped in the new Justice Center was a jail with great concerns. And I didn't have but one elevator to contend with, as you do here in Whatcom County. What I guess I want to say most of all is your current jail is horribly unsafe, just as mine was. It is our friends, it's our neighbors who end up there for things that they've done, but it's also our friends and neighbors and family members who work there. And when you look at the problems that we're having in Skagit, as well as here in staffing, I look at your current facility and think, who in a million years would want to work in this setting? Further, it doesn't help to facilitate treatment interventions and that handoff to community agencies. You are so badly in need of a new facility. My fear is something really bad is going to happen before you fix your problem. I can tell you in Skagit, we provide trauma-informed care to our staff. We have the college comes in, works with our students, our inmates. Behavioral health exchanges happen in that community. And we were fully supported by our substance behavioral health community.
Thank you for the comments. Your time is up.
Part of that shared system. Thank you.
My name is Atul Deshmane. I was a member of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I'm also a county planning commissioner, a PUD commissioner, and also happen to be running for county council, but I'm not in here in any of those capacities. The great majority, I would estimate maybe 97% of the work of the county council, the SAC, and the implementation team has been focused on alternatives. The implementation plan, which is the final deliverable of that flow of work, is needing an implementation plan. The implementation plan, I would argue, should be driving our jail facilities tax effort. But they are not really coupled as far as I can tell. And for this reason, I was the sole outspoken elected to take a dissenting position against our approach. I'd like not to remain alone in that capacity. Thank you.
Good evening, Marcus D. with Serenity Outreach Services. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. I would like to be able to come up and say that I don't think that with 2 jails in this town, that you don't have a jail problem, that you have a judicial problem, but you really do have a jail problem, don't you? At least the one that we have needs to be badly remodeled in the very least. But that aside, and I do think that for us to build for us to build a jail, planning on having it overloaded by an overburdened judiciary doesn't make sense any more than how we deal with homelessness. And I won't go on that right now, but they're all linked, aren't they? So I would like to speak again, as I wrote a letter to the SAC. I wrote a letter, the same letter I sent a copy to every member of council and executives of city and county, specifically speaking of a meeting that I had with Eric Ritchie, 2018, while he was running for his current position and now he, at this time he was the deputy prosecutor, where he did share with me that I asked him what he wanted to do with the jail, and he told me that he would like to see it on the south parking lot. And why he would like to see it on the south parking lot was because of what he considered to be a constitutional issue. And I'd like to remind everybody of that again. If you do video courtroom systems where you've got a guy in an orange jumpsuit on a screen, statistically, the prosecution is favored. And that's something that Eric Ritchie was not interested in at that time. I've asked him since, and he said that Satpal told him that there's just not enough room over here. Well, I would argue that there's probably enough room over here, all right. And it sounds like the plan sounds like that allows for that. But I would also caution you all to not integrate post incarceration services near the jail. It's a chilling effect for anybody who's seeking services to go to a jail to get those services. If you've fallen out of favor with your probation or whatever, you're not going to seek services because you're afraid to go near the jail, a site of trauma for you. So thank you for the time.
Your time is up.
We'll go to the online attendees, starting with Debbie David. And if anybody would like to speak after that, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. Go ahead, please, Debbie.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. If you hear background noise, I apologize. I'm caring for 3 young children, 2 which are diversely abled, as my daughter is inpatient treatment in another state because there's not help here. I'm a 30+ year resident of Whatcom County. I'm president of the Restorative Community Coalition. And any planning that happens at this meeting would be short-sighted without looking at the bigger picture, which is information that you can easily digest by listening to podcasts or reading the book by Dr. Gabor Mate, The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. We are where we are because of unhealed childhood trauma. This covers all across all levels of socioeconomic statuses, the BIPOC, our BIPOC target groups, everyone. And until we deal with what that has done to our entire country, that we haven't addressed it, what we're doing right now is going to be wasted money. We need to focus on rebuilding community. We need to support families. The 25% of women in this country go back to work within 2 weeks after their babies are born, causing extreme trauma that will show up decades later or sometimes sooner. Our suicide rate among children is off the charts, and it's going up. It started going up before the pandemic. We all need to sit down and think about this. Listen to the podcast, become informed, educate yourself, learn about what's really going on, or everything you're doing right now will not matter one bit. Thank you for listening.
If anyone else joining online would like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no hands raised, but please feel free to raise your hand later. We'll go back to the attendees in the chambers.
Hi, my name is Megan. I don't have anything super conjointed to say, but overall, I just wanted to use my public comment to provide feedback that there's a lot of the Bellingham public that doesn't want a new jail. I have a friend who is currently incarcerated in the Whatcom County Jail, and I've gotten to know people who have been released over the past couple months. And I just kind of want to build off of what other people are saying, that it is so awful conditions in there. And I kind of want to ask you guys, clearly you've proven to us that the county can't maintain and ensure humane conditions at the jail that you currently have. Why should we give you money and funds and approval for a better or a bigger jail? You've proven that you can't do it. And I also want to add that clearly there's money, right, for services and stuff. And I don't understand why services have to be linked to this jail. Why can't we try to meet people's basic human needs before incarcerating them? People deserve housing. The rental assistance program is ending really soon, or if it hasn't already. The situation is dire. If people don't have housing, food, medical care, what are they supposed to do? And for you to seek to criminalize these people's existence before trying to meet their needs, that's not a very just society to me. That's not a very safe society that I want to live in here. And I just want you to think about that, I guess. Yeah, I guess another thing that I want to ask you guys is how much would it cost to renovate the jail? Is that something you'd consider? It seems like you have $170 million sitting around. You could maybe make some housing, do a lot of things with that. So that'd be cool. Thank you. Please don't build this jail.
Hi there. First of all, I want to thank you guys for all your work on this. My name is Erin Gunter. I live in Ferndale, Washington. I moved up here in 1988 to go to Western. Have stayed up here since. I have volunteered in our community since 1995 in various capacities. I think it's important to work back and give back to your community. I personally know we need a new jail. I've had tours. I'm on city council, so I have looked into a lot of things, and some things I am concerned about is sustainability. If we offer these programs and say we're going to do these, how are we going to be able to maintain them? I am also a big component of accountability. I think people need to be held accountable for their actions. I know this probably won't go well in this room, but I don't think they should be dismissed if I just think people need to be held accountable. I do think location is very important. I think we need to be able to be accessible to people. I think Iron Gate is a great opportunity for this because they can access other services in the community. And I hope we can get federal and state funds for this. I hope it's not all on the taxpayers to pay for. And thank you for your time.
Hello, this is Catherine Orlowski, and I sit on the Whatcom County Council Child and Family Task Force. And we are tasked with holding government accountable for their impacts to children and family. I'm very passionate about this through lived experience because you can't imagine what it's like to think about this every second of the day. The level of not having your needs met, and you think about that every second of the day. You get real creative. You start thinking about crimes because you have no other choice. And as a mother, we have to protect the mothers because they'll do anything. And so with this lived experience, it's powerful and it's valuable. And my question is, how many people with lived experience incarcerated in the trenches, living in the trenches, helped you design and develop this proposal? I challenge you to think about that question. And I wonder if you'd get more community acceptance if you had somebody with actual lived experience. And that's really important. I think that's going to be monumental to solving these emergency crises, having that lived experience, because we're directly connected to it. When it comes to charity, the root of that word actually means to give of yourself. And when you're in the trenches and you live there, you're very, very connected to it. And you're very creative with that community. And that community of people is growing really, really large. And we care. Through my lived experience, it has led me for civic involvement, working on solutions that are working great in the community. And I've had no other choice. And now I'm running for office. But I am here as myself and as a mother. And I really care about this issue. I want to support this.
Your time is up.
Good evening. My name is Lyle Sorensen. I've been here many times. I was just looking at your numbers that you presented earlier on, and you mentioned that 400 to 440 beds. If we use the 80% rule, what that really means is that we have 352 beds that you're proposing down the road. Didn't you say the capacity was 325 is what we've been averaging? So you're actually proposing adding 25 usable beds. That's not a great investment in carceral capacity for our community. By the time that we start construction, we'll have outgrown that facility. If we go back and look at the report that you guys put together that you worked so hard on, back in 1982, they proposed 128 beds. Dewey Dessler, if you'll remember, said that wasn't big enough, got it up to 148 beds. Within 2 years, of completion, we were over capacity. So then we expanded into all of our programming space that we have in our current downtown jail to get to 198 beds. So here we are. We've been working on this for 30 years, and we're going to repeat history. We're going to build because we're going to make decisions that I like to call emo political decisions. If it sounds good and it makes me feel better, then it must be good. And we throw sound policy out the window. We don't look at common sense. We don't look at actual and carceral need. There's a need for jail and services. You know, programs are great, but they're effective when we have the ability to hold someone accountable. If you don't hold up your end of our contract for us to expunge this, we have to have carceral capacity to help to provide that. Otherwise, we're just enabling people. If we can't provide them with reasonable accountability. By the way, really quickly, I took one of the top experts on carceral facilities through our facility. We got rated in the bottom 10% of everything he's looked at in 40 years. And that includes the Deep South. So yes, we need it.
Next, we'll go online to the attendee listed as Jean. And if anyone else would like to speak after Jean, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. Go ahead, please, Jean. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I had 2 questions that I hadn't heard addressed. One is for the La Bounty Ferndale location. One of the factors that leads to recovery is the ability of incarcerated persons to have contact with family members. And as I understand it, there isn't reliable public transportation there. As incarcerated people are more often lower income, that would be a concern. So I hadn't heard that addressed. Before that comes to a vote, I hope that would be addressed. Of course, there's also the factor of public defenders, and there's not enough to go around. That would increase the amount of time a public defender or a paid attorney had to go out and see their clientele, reduce perhaps the amount of time they had available to see clients, which would make it more difficult to adequately serve those clients. And the second thing, even though I listened to this whole presentation, I really didn't understand why the people who worked so hard on this thought it was necessary to put all of these services in one location, which is why they came up with the La Bounty location as being the preferred. If these services were provided at different locations, they wouldn't need such a large place. Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. There are no other hands raised. We'll go back to the attendees in the chambers.
Linnea Fleury. I live in the Ferndale area. And I'm here to tell you that I can actually get from my home, which is over by Box's Berry Farm, into town a heck of a lot faster than you can get across Bellingham. Just FYI. So if that's a factor for the La Bounty location, I would consider that. My big concern in being here tonight is crime. I was in Fred Meyer's and actually saw a man just help himself and walk out the door, and I was just appalled. I said to the clerk, "Aren't you going to do something?" And they said, "No, we are not allowed to because we may be assaulted by that person, and then there's liability and so on and so forth." On the way home, I was concerned about that, so I called the store manager and he confirmed that. And I said, "You mean I just spent $43.37 in your store and I could have just walked out the door and not paid?" Long pause, but he agreed I could have done that. Crime is a concern here and it's getting worse. And so is homeless. Now, what are the two things that are the prime contributor to that? And it's drug and alcohol abuse. By your statistics here, it was 80%. I've heard between 75 and 85%, but we're right in the ballpark. I would like personally to see more emphasis on treatment for people having issues with drugs and alcohol than and I'm way more concerned about that, frankly, than a new jail. Now, I can see the need for a new jail, but I really think we need some really good treatment centers here. And I would in particular like to see people given a choice if they have an addiction problem, whether it be to alcohol or drugs, go to jail or get treatment. One or the other. In the long run, treatment is going to save us all so much money, and it's going to save a human life. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya Morales. I'm the founder of Washington People's Privacy. I'm a member of the For People's Campaign. I am also running for Bellingham City Council. One of the reasons I decided to step into this race is because I feel like we need to be more imaginative and more courageous about how we approach these issues. And so in terms of this plan, I want to lift up what some of the directly impacted people tonight have said from their own experience. Very simple things like the mats in the jail are so thin, right? They just feel like a piece of rubber. How much money does it cost to just replace all of those sleeping mats? There are many, many things we could have done or could go ahead and do to rehab what we have. The reality is that tying services or care to carcerality doesn't make sense. Punitive and carceral solutions are antithetical to care. That's not what care is. Care is not punitive. And the fact that we have this, very complicated, there's this beautiful sort of mind mapping plan that is very circular, very detailed. And I know a lot of folks here probably did the same. I gave a ton of feedback in the Justice Project survey. I explained the many reasons why I disagree with expanding carcerality rather than expanding services and housing. And I think I'll just repeat a little bit of that tonight and say that the reality is poverty is the root of almost all of these issues. People cannot afford housing. They cannot afford food. They cannot afford to participate in community. And so we need to address that. I think I'm just about out of time, so I'm going to stop there. I also just want to say that I hope to follow up with a coalition email to you all explaining what we'd like to see instead of this.
Cool. Hi, I'm Orion. I wrote a thing. So, knowing that the function of a jail is to fill a jail, I'm feeling incredibly frustrated. Knowing that the current conditions of the jail are the product of intentionally poor management, I'm incredibly frustrated. Knowing that a new jail is being pushed in my community, one that would expand the carceral system and incarcerate hundreds more people within my community, I am incredibly frustrated. In 2016, the firm Designed to Last was contracted to produce a report on the conditions of the current jail, and the total cost for repairing jail deficiencies and a 20-year renewal plan came out to $42.9 million. Accounting for inflation, this cost totals to $53.8 million, which is, kind of a lot different than the $137 to $207 million that the new jail would cost. In the lead up to the vote on the new jail, a report is underway focusing on the conditions of the jail currently. The viability of a renovation is not being included in this report. Reading the reasons cited, the viability of a renovation is clearly a matter of opinion and comes down to political gain. The sheriff wants to take a tough on crime stance, and the construction of a new jail is to his political benefit. Knowing that whether or not more people will be incarcerated in my community comes down to whether it benefits politicians is scary. I'm frustrated with the lack of control that the political inner workings of my community allots to community members. I feel out of control of a clearly manufactured narrative surrounding the needs of my community. Whatcom County has already voted down a new jail several times in the past, and I'm incredibly frustrated knowing that the new jail and the vote on it are the product of deteriorating conditions in a jail that nobody but inner circle politicians focused on electability get to have a say on. The health and well-being of this community should not be dependent on electability and political gain. Thank you.
Evening. My name is Constance. I want to say how much I appreciate this public forum and how much passion and compassion there is in this room. I'm speaking right now for my partner, Henry Ohana. He asked me to tell you a couple of things. He would like you to emphasize number 8 in your plan over number 9. He would like to see a safer, more humane facility be built rather than spending money on research. We all pay way too much money to research companies, which we could use in a better way. The other thing is that he would like to say that his concern is that, like our incomes, we will fill whatever we have. He doesn't want to see an increase in our jail population or the rooms available because we'll fill them. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Doug Carlberg. I've lived here in Bellingham or Whatcom County now for 65 years, and I'm not very happy with what I see. So when I come to problems like this, I always try to go out and ask the world what works. I don't try to always come up with my own answers, and I stick with the data, because if you don't stick with the data, you'll spend money and it'll still be a failure. I highly recommend this book that just came out this last week. This guy's a specialist. He writes for the New York Times, he writes for the Washington Post, and he writes for the Wall Street Journal. Now, there's a guy worth listening to. This has come out after the defund the police problem. I'll give you a couple takeaways. In urban environments where they demonize the police and they cut the budgets, their citizens are less safe. It's a fact. And he lays it out in hard numbers. That's reality. This crap, and I use that word because I think it's the right word, of demonizing the people that will lay down their life if you need it, the people that keep us safe. Not only should people not be talking in this demonization stuff, the elected leaders should stand up and say, we're not going there with you. And sometimes they have to go against their own party to do that. But that's what it takes to keep us safe, because that's the second takeaway from this book. The purpose of this social justice system is not to incarcerate people, is to keep all of us from becoming victims. And that gets lost in this sometimes. There's a lot of victims these days. We got 102,000 kids that died this year from fentanyl. That's more than we lost in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I'm not seeing a robust plan for that in this jail thing.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is up.
We're going to go to the online speakers, and first we'll go to John Bremer and then Sonia Lerner. Go ahead, please, John. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please, John Bremer.
Hi, this is John Bremer, lifelong resident, Whatcom County, Big Samish. I wanted to just say something about the data availability in the plan. I think it's awesome. We're in data analytics and visualization, and we've been looking for opportunities for unpaid interns to work in visualizing the data. And we're excited to see the more availability of the data so that we can like crowdsource it and use things like generative AI to have better visibility and clarity on the data. So we're looking forward to more initiatives focused on that and opportunities. Thank you.
All right, next we'll go to Sonia Lerner. And if anyone else would like to speak after that, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon. Go ahead, please, Sonia.
All right, I'll actually introduce myself. This is Kimia Fanayan. I'm a public health major at Western Washington University. I was just kind of like listening over my friends' shoulders who were on this call, and I couldn't help but just feel like the urge to need to speak on this. So I want to share some stats because I know that we all like those. The houselessness in Whatcom County specifically has increased 69% since 2012 to 2022. And within those houseless folks that we have within the county, almost 60% of them or more experience drug addiction and problems. And then we're seeing that Whatcom County wants to criminalize drug use. And now we're on the topic of jails. So we have this root issue of houselessness, and then it's a drug problem. And 73% of inmates within Whatcom County are also homeless or couch surfing with friends. And as we know, Washington is not a warm state. It's not fun to be sleeping outside, and I can't imagine having to do so. So a root issue to that is also just people are trying to stay warm. People are trying to stay sane, because whether or not like you use drugs going like becoming homeless, like you're likely going to start because you're around that, because you need to keep yourself warm because of whatever reasons. But then we look at the stats of people who are incarcerated, and 62% of them are more likely to die by suicide. And then each year that someone spends in jail cuts their life expectancy by 2 years. So you're just repeating the cycle of having people be houseless, and then them dying in prison, and then getting out and their life expectancy being cut. And you're just repeating this.
Thank you for your comments. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Austin Papritz, and then the attendee listed as Vaughn E.O. Go ahead, please, Austin. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please, Austin Papritz. We'll go ahead to the next speaker. We'll go to Vaughn E.O. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, this is Vaughn Emetochoa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. It's hard for me to wrap my head around all of this, but I just wanted to share kind of the pictures that are in my head right now as I'm listening to everybody and trying to synthesize everything that was said. I have a fuzzy picture in my head of Iron Gate and a vertical building, and that one is like for the more violent offenders, and at a certain point in the judicial process, the justice process. And as I was hearing people talk about the bounty site, and that it's, that's more of the possibility for horizontal building, and my mind just goes into housing and having that more of the site for a rehabilitation center for medically assisted recovery. I know someone in Lifeline Connections, and there's not enough beds, there's not enough, services for the needs. There's a medically assisted treatment center that's not a residential one, that's in the Birchwood neighborhood. And if the La Bounty site could be that residential medical treatment center, and because it's also expandable, the site can be further developed, maybe that's the next site for emergency weather sheltering. That can be enough room for everyone. When it comes to emergency shelter, there have been hundreds of people that show up, and so that's the fuzzy picture in my head. Is Iron Gate as more of the jail, and then La Bounty is more of a medically assisted treatment center and residences and emergency shelter. Thank you.
We'll go back to Austin Papritz. Go ahead, please. You have 2 minutes. Go ahead, please, Austin. You have 2 minutes. If anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. We'll go back to the chambers for speakers.
I know it was so close, but with your permission, folks who are those members, I'd like to go to the. Okay, can you just put this, sir?
My name is Chris, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done and for all the opinions and facts that have been expressed tonight. I am here because I am a nurse at the jail next door, and I spend 40 hours a week there. And I appreciate the need for incarceration reduction, for alternatives. I don't think it's great that a lot of people are homeless or houseless or on drugs and end up in jail. And sometimes maybe they don't need to be there. But the fact is that they are there. And if we care about them, that is a horrible facility. And I can't imagine pouring money into fixing that facility. I can't imagine how it could be better. There is not any daylight. There's one place for outdoor recreation, so-called, and the windows are, the open air is very, very high, and they can't see anything outside apart from a very, very limited number of cells, which is the hard isolation cells. It's difficult to move people. It's difficult to bring them to clinic. It's difficult to bring them to psych appointments. We have 2 very small clinic spaces, and that's it. That's for behavioral health, and that's for us treating them. So I do care about our patients, and I would say that I have seen a lot more examples in our staff and also in the correctional staff of patience and understanding and trying to be helpful than I have of the opposite. And I know that corrections is not a great environment, but I do think that a lot of people are doing the best they can to take care of people. We do have a Subutex program. We treat 1/3 of the population. Every day they get dosed for their opiate use disorder, and they did get new mats recently. So we do have new bed mats. And I do want what's best for our patients. And I think that a new jail, preferably a 1-story one with a lot of light and outdoor opportunities and education and treatment.
Hi, so Bellingham and Wacom have voted multiple times in the past on funding a new jail, and we voted no in the past multiple times. And so I feel is somewhat of a slap in the face to keep getting it proposed after voting no multiple times. It seems like you're not actually listening to what people are telling you, that jail isn't the answer. In Bellingham, rental support is ending. Rents are increasing at a really alarming rate. Every studio and 1-bedroom I look at is at least like $1,300. So that's just completely unaffordable, and food benefits are being reduced. This coupled with the recent criminalization ordinance that's passed and plans for a new jail is a concerted effort and war on poor and homeless people. And it's trying to disappear and erase members of our community to try to make people who walk downtown feel better about the fact that what we're doing isn't working, that people are ending up homeless and that people are poor because we're failing as a society to actually do the things. I hope that would help. I hope we actually put this money towards no barrier shelters, no barrier housing, because every housing program that exists right now requires a vast amount of effort to get into, vast amount of requirements to fulfill. And that's just not conducive to like actually building communities that are working. I see the rest of my time.
All right. So I've been volunteering and working with people who have been incarcerated in the past, and they're all grateful that that they're not in the streets today with the current policies and procedures we have in place. They're all grateful they were incarcerated, so they had separation from drugs. They got clean, they got clarity, and they changed their lives. They are critical of jails and prisons, and they know that we need more intentional services within carceral settings. But if they were in the streets today, they'd be dead. They've all said that. We have multiple overdoses every day. We had someone in Whatcom County booked and released on charges of trafficking. They were caught later for missing court, and they were booked and released again. Yeah, we have teenagers buying drugs and overdosing in encampments. This soft on crime book and release method doesn't work. Our current jail is terrible, in terrible condition, and we are on way too limited space. We need a new jail with more than enough space for our growing community and one with intentional services. Also too, you should work with people who have lived experience in creating this. Like, we should look at this as like, what kind of jail could we create that would be an example for Washington State and the entire country? Jenny Burton, she was an addict for 30 years. Her story is just, it's insane. And she got her life together, went to UW, graduated with honors. And then here she was the recipient of the Truman Scholar. She was the first person in 11 years to get the Truman Scholarship. And she got that with her proposal for her program that she developed. It's called OUT. And if you want a whole network of people with lived experience who they've lived through it, they know where the pitfalls are, they know where services are failing, they know where carceral settings are failing. Those are the people to talk to. They've lived through it, and she's definitely lived through it. Look her up on YouTube. Reach out to her. She's a wealth of knowledge in it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ileana, and I'm a resident in Bellingham. But where I grew up, it was not unlike Bellingham, with underfunded care and service systems and prioritized carceral systems. A lot of us grew up feeling really afraid of not having services for the things that we need. And so instead, you know, what kids do is you imagine. And unfortunately, I get to live on past people who can't live on to be in this room today. And so that's the power of prefiguration. That's the power of imagination. And it seems like there's a lack of that in the way that we're thinking about this, because it's to realize incrementally the world that we want to live in. That's what prefiguration is. And it's realizing and allocating for the underlying conditions that lead to incarceration instead of prioritizing their incarceration. Building a new jail with more capacity, as many people have said, builds a capacity for more people to be imprisoned, for more people to be criminalized. We should be imagining a life beyond theft of land and imprisonment. We should be working to reduce the prison population through initiatives that reform on our way to the abolition of those systems. And we should be ending power structures and imagining new ways of coexisting with care and not just inclusion or recognition, and especially not as an afterthought, which it seems like that has been in the process of this. I know it can be hard for many to imagine what these kinds of systems of care should be like, but think about the everyday, the small little intimate ways that you are shown care, and think about the ways that that can be proliferated out. We should be showing people that it should be possible, and that's what your proposal should be.
We'll go to any online speakers. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand virtually by clicking on the hand icon or dialing *9 if you're joining by phone. Okay, there are no hands raised online, so we'll go back to the chambers.
Great. Kathy, we're going to go ahead and just hear from the folks who are in the room, and then we're going to wrap up. So we have 5 more people. Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for allowing it. My name is Charlie. I'm a childcare provider and a student at Western, where I've been studying the Justice Project Implementation Plan alongside students, professors, and community organizers. And I'm here to say that I will not vote on a ballot measure that constructs a new jail. Incarceration is traumatizing and inhumane, and it's inappropriate and offensive to call any jail trauma-informed. If you are truly committed to creating safety and public health in our community, funding should be directed to providing free and accessible healthcare, housing, education, public services, and spaces for community gathering and cultural connection. That should happen first, and that is all that should happen, and no funding should go towards building a new jail. I am a prison abolitionist, which means that I believe in the complete dissolution of the prison industrial complex, and I do not support its expansion in any way. This means that I look at the connections between the entangled systems of housing instability, food insecurity, and incarceration, something that I do not believe this proposal adequately considers. The recent ordinance criminalizing public drug use and the recent reduction of rental assistance in Bellingham will negatively influence the lives of many people in Whatcom County. And if a new jail is built, many people who are struggling with poverty will be incarcerated. And this could be me, this could be my friends, and this makes me very fearful and hurt that adults would choose this possibility. Incarceration does not work, and it does not address the issues that this proposal is trying to solve. I understand that the conditions of the jail are deeply disturbing, and personally, I believe that we should free everyone who is currently incarcerated. I am certain that the majority of people who have spoken today agree that there should be no new Whatcom County jail. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sophia Ray, and I'm a senior at Seaholm High School. I'm also president of the Teen Court Club, part of Seaholm, and I've engaged in the last 2 years with many cases of youth offenders, we call them respondents, in order to destigmatize the experience that they've faced. And throughout my time on Teen Court, I've worked with many youth who have been involved in the criminal justice system from a young age. These folks have grown up in cycles of abuse and cycles without housing, in cycles where they are marginalized from the systems that are meant to serve them, like their education, their families, and so many others. And I'd just like to bring out this example because I believe that restorative justice is a model that has been modeled here by the youth of the county of Whatcom County, and it works. Last year, we had 100% success rate with our youth respondents, where we offered them services and community service and community connections that could actually provide healing between the individual and the community. And that works. What does not work is punitive measures that continue a cycle of marginalization and of pain and of trauma. It does not work, and we know this. And so if it works for 18 and younger, it certainly works for 18 and older, and for all of our adults and everybody in the United States. Everybody deserves a chance to be restored and to have healing. I'd also like to point out that the Whatcom County Jail has large amounts of overrepresentation of Black and Native people. I haven't heard that being said today, and the folks I work with are folks of color, and I know that if it wasn't for programs like Teen Court and other restorative justice measures, those folks are going to continue to be punished, continue to be marginalized, and continue to be at the fringes of our society. So please focus on restorative justice and healing before punitive incarceration. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, is that good? Yeah. Hi, my name is Melissa Osborne. I'm an assistant professor in the sociology department here at Western. And I teach and do research on organizations and complex systems, including homelessness, housing policy, and the policing of marginalized groups. I agree that the jail is in disrepair. I've taken the online tour, not an in-person tour. We're at the point where we need to deal with that because we're at human rights violation levels, right? So I don't disagree in terms of that. This decision isn't made in a vacuum, right? And making decisions within a complex system are really difficult. We've had a lot of people tonight talk about the aspects of the complex system that lead to people interfacing with law enforcement and criminal justice, right? That comes down to essentially treating every human as a human and providing them with the resources and support they need. We've also had folks talk about what happens when people leave the incarceration system and again, don't have the resources and support that they need in order to move into the next chapter of their lives. A big part of what I see as the issue tonight for a lot of folks in this room is that the proposal itself has a lot of really great ideas, but not a lot of detail, right? So I teach a class on homelessness and housing policy. Satpal was there during our second week. It's community engaged. One of my students is here. If this was turned in as their programmatic intervention proposal that they do at the end of class, they wouldn't get a very good grade, right? Because you haven't given us detailed empirical evidence to support the ideas that you have, and you haven't given us detailed ideas around each of the different concepts and numbered things that you have there. You gave us the numbers we got were the cost of 3 jails, but not how much of the pie that would take and what would be left over for support and resources, not to mention all of the services we have in this county and the folks that work there that are understaffed and underpaid and under-resourced. Thank you.
So, you have, is it Austin? Yeah, Austin now can apparently get online. So Austin, ready?
Let's go ahead with Austin Papritz online.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, yay, yay. Thank you so much, everybody. I believe united we stand. My wonder is what to do in the interim while the criminal culture is exponentially increasing and no consequences. And Whatcom County is known for you can do anything and not get arrested. There's over 10,000 outstanding warrants. That needs to be verified. I know 2,800 in the city. I am wondering how realistic is an interim, a compassionate interim jail with services? There are tangible possibilities, and I'm wondering as well, how much longer are we going to wait? I mean, my renter watched a guy run out with tons of alcohol, another one with, you know, a cart full, and it is the commodity for drug change, or, you know, and so how much longer can we wait? I've seen so much, and I want to acknowledge as well the police and all the care team that I've seen are so reverent to who they're dealing with. And the amount of theft with no consequences, a system that is outdated, clogged court system, outdated jail capacity. And I've seen overdosing, and the people are so kind, the care team, but they don't have anywhere to go. So they revive the person and walk away, and no option. We need all of it. I'm hopeful that with this innovation, we can have compassionate jail, treatment, detox, work, study, education possibilities, all of it. We're overpopulation. Our population is growing. Time for innovation and follow through now, and what to do with the interim. Good. Thank you so much. Yay, I got to say it. Yay!
Hi, my name's Valerie Lyon Parker. There has been a lot brought up here this evening. Originally, I was for the LaBounty location and kind of putting it all together. I've changed my mind after hearing different speakers. What about a smaller jail in the parking lot across from the original, and put the behavioral health and drug assistance programs out of the city, because a quieter environment is much more conducive to healing. And also, what about putting put the emphasis on the behavioral health building first? You might get a lot more buy-in from people in Bellingham, and then see then you have actual data and numbers of what's left. What kind of jail do we actually need? Besides all of that, I'm here tonight as the mom of a 28-year-old son with serious mental illness, and in the last 2 years also meth addiction. He's in jail right now. Has been the last couple of weeks. Last we heard, he had no public defender. He's probably in solitary, which is about the worst place to put him, but also not good to have him with general population for his own safety. I also have a book recommendation called Healing: Our Path from Mental Illness to Mental Health. The gist of this book is people, place, and purpose. That is what is needed to bring true healing to people. They need to be around people who love them, a place to be, and a purpose to live and contribute. Yeah. Oh, and one last thing on the transportation piece, from experience, make sure that the transportation takes them door to door and sees them in that door. My son was not seen in the door. He didn't go in the door. He went and got more drugs. So thank you.
I'm David Curley. Thank you so much for your patience and for letting me have a minute. I have struggled with making a decision about this issue. I hate the conditions of the old jail. I think it is cruel by design. I'm hopeful for a new jail that is humane by design as much as a jail can be. And to just give you a kind of a guideline in one word, sunlight, sunlight. My friend Alfred Louis at Portland State University has researched for his whole life the effects of sunlight on human moods, and they are profound. Build a tower to keep inmates out of contact with the sun is inhumane by design. Yeah. So thank you very much.
And I'm so glad you spoke last. That was just perfect. So we're out of time tonight, and I really appreciate everybody who came and shared so authentically. And if you do have, I don't know where the slide is, but if you have other comments, Kathy, if you could put up the slide with the email address, that would be great. So if you go home tonight and you have other thoughts, but I think this town hall was awesome. It was awesome. So let's thank our panel. Thank you, panel. And then let's thank all of you. And then Barry's going to wind us up. Thank you. You did so helpful. So helpful. Barry?
I just want to say thank you again for everybody that came out tonight. This is going to be certainly part of our input for looking at finishing off our implementation plan. You all have been super informative to us tonight, and thank you and have a great night.